What are you protecting? Are you protecting your mission or are you protecting your tradition?
Not-for-profits can learn from it.
I'm making the decision today for the people I'm going to care for in 5 years.
Margin is not a dirty word.
Welcome to the Leader's Abstract, the podcast about the inner work of leadership. Here we explore the ideas, habits, and blind spots that shape how mission-driven leaders show up for their teams and the communities they serve. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Rutter. With me, as always, my co-host, Joe Tomaino. Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. Thanks.
Good. It's good to see you, as always. And we are once again just one-on-one here. We had a couple of great guests over the last few episodes, and I'm looking forward to just a one-on-one conversation. What are we talking about today?
Well, Jeremy, I thought, given that fall is coming, we could talk about the anticipation of the woodcock migration.
I agree. Yeah, we'll switch this up.
This is the wrong podcast. No, no. I think probably something that a lot of my clients struggle with, and I know in your work you struggle with this too all the time, is making decisions between juggling the mission of the organization and profitability of the organization. The old margin versus mission uh, conundrum. And I thought that might be an interesting topic for a lot of our listeners.
It is interesting, and even the phrasing when we talk about mission versus margin, it really says a lot about nonprofit leaders in that we feel like it's a versus.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and when we discuss it and we bring these things up, we don't talk about mission and margin. It's mission versus margin.
right,
And
right.
so to just give a little, level set of who the listeners are listening to. I know Joe, we had a great episode with you a few months back talking about your work history and how you got to where you're at. I've yet to really share anything about my career, but currently I am the CEO of a faith based nonprofit that operates long term care facilities. So, nursing homes, assisted livings, adult homes, adult daycare, those types of things. And it is faith based. It's started with the Lutheran Church, Presbyterian Church, and they are nonprofit. So that is the mission based work that I'm currently in and have spent the last several years with this organization. Prior to that, I was with another faith based organization that was Free Methodist based and same type of organization where long term care, nursing homes, assisted livings, and a lot of faith based organizations, they start out as some type of mission based work. Um, Orphanages are quite frequently, they start out as orphanages and then they, transition into various nonprofit work. And the previous organization I was with, that's what they started at, was an orphanage. And they were over 150 years old. You talk about, mission based. They made a lot of decisions that were based solely on mission and not a lot of margin decisions.
Right, right.
And it's one of these things that um, you really see the difference. I spent a brief period working for a for-profit nursing home, and when I say brief, it was probably 3 years, and you know, I left under the realization that we had denominational differences that just could not be resolved. Unreconcilable differences, is that what they say in the
Yeah,
business
yeah,
world? Never went back to a for-profit. Now, Joe, you've worked on both sides, for-profits and
yeah,
nonprofits, and
yeah.
and so you obviously must see the difference here between mission versus margin. What's some of your experience in that?
It's interesting. I worked for a large for-profit nursing home, and prior to that, I'd always worked for Catholic organizations. And when I interviewed with the owners for the director of nursing position, I asked them. I said, am I going to have difficulty getting what I need for patient care? And the owner said something really interesting. He says, "Good patient care is good business." And he said, if you need something for good patient care, we're going to get it for you. They said, if we don't have good patient care, we have regulatory issues, we have lawsuits, we have all kinds of things that cost us a lot of money. And they were true to their word. If I needed a pressure relieving bed, for a patient with at risk for pressure ulcers, it wasn't a hassle to get it. Or if I needed extra staffing for someone who was going to fall and I needed to put a 1-to-1 on, it was not a problem getting that approved. And that was kind of very different than what I had experienced in some of the large not-for-profit organizations, where you had to go through 5 layers of vice presidents to get an approval for a pressure reducing mattress, or so it was refreshingly surprising to me that it was not an issue. But I've also known other for-profit organizations where that's not the case. And I know other not-for-profit organizations, which, are not the case. So it's
That's right.
it's
They get
really,
demonized quite a bit. The for-profit, we kind of use that as a swear word
yeah,
in the nonprofit world, and we have this high moral aptitude to saying that, well, we're not for profit, and that must mean that we're just better people.
right.
We care more, and it's not the case as you've experienced there.
Yep.
Part of where I think we run into this mission versus margin, where some of the issues are, is I don't think a lot of people really can define what does mission mean to
Right.
them.
Right. No, you're right. And also the whole what I find with my not-for-profit clients especially, is they don't understand sustainability, and that margin is not a dirty word. Uh, and it's amazing how many people really are opposed. I've presented to boards where I say, well, how can you approve a budget that's a loss? Why don't you pressure management into giving you a budget that's at least break even? And they're like, well, we're not for profit. Well, what does that mean? I mean, the only difference between for profit and not for profit, both are supposed to generate a margin. The for profit takes that margin and shares it with the shareholders who own the business as their personal profit. A not-for-profit takes that margin and reinvests it back in the organization, or uses it to sustain activities that it normally wouldn't get reimbursed for.
Right, absolutely. And when we look at this, sometimes we're instead of really defining what mission is, we use that, and what we're really protecting is tradition,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So it's margin versus tradition versus we've always done it that way. And that's really where I think a lot of not-for-profits run into is we don't want to get into anything that would besmirch our name and make people feel like we are being for-profity. Is that you
well,
experience that as
the,
well?
well, I mean, what I've observed, working with your organizations, is that I think I don't know whether this comes out of the time you spent in the for-profit world or just because it makes sense, but you have lean management, and you don't have layers of bureaucracy that people have to go through, and you prioritize putting resources at the bedside. That's not the case in a lot of not-for-profits. A lot of not-for-profits become fat at the upper levels that really don't contribute to what, and as you aptly said, they lose sight of what the mission is. The mission is not to promote employment for the community of people that need high-level jobs. The mission is to take care of people who are sick and injured and need recovery.
Absolutely. That's right. And, making those decisions where it's, as you had said, reinvesting those dollars that you would consider profit or,
Right,
you
right,
know, in some cases, just, cash flow extra, reinvesting that into the direct care workers. I'd much rather, spend money on an RN than a vice president.
right,
And,
right, exactly.
you do need certain layers of administrative and executive team, just because of the complexity of
Right. right.
Medicare and Medicaid billing. However, you're right. You see a lot of bloated
Yep.
not-for-profits, and I think some of that kind of comes from our history of not-for-profits into healthcare providers. So if you look at some of what I would call true not-for-profits, which are quasi-government type of not-for-profits, they really are very top-heavy.
Yeah.
A
Yep.
lot of them,
Yep.
and then the workload. And I can say this, I feel, in a justified manner without pointing too many fingers, because I did for a brief period, um, between the for-profit nursing home and the nonprofit nursing home. I worked for a quasi-government nonprofit that ran food pantries.
Okay.
And they had a bunch of programs, food pantries and HEAP and welfare to work programs. They essentially took over. Um, it was one of the opportunities programs,
Right.
the community block grant programs. And, so they took over a lot of what would be government contracts, and it was within a nonprofit. And what I found in my brief period there, it drove me crazy. I had all my work done by like Tuesday afternoon. It was like, this is, we had 8 people around the office. We probably needed three.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. But
you know,
you had it budgeted for, so they filled them.
well, and that is the key. We had
And
the community
if you
block
don't
grant.
fill them, you won't get it in the next
You
budget
won't get
cycle.
it in the next one.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And, we had these block grants that, we had to spend the money.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and what better way can nonprofits spend the money, which is, on director level staff.
Yeah.
And so I didn't stay there very long because I was offered an opportunity as a nursing home administrator in a nonprofit,
Excellent.
and I moved on to that.
We went through something in New York State over the last 10, 15 years where a lot of not-for-profits sold to for-profit organizations. And a lot of that, I think, was because they didn't force themselves to generate a margin each year. And so they could not fund their depreciation of their buildings. So after 30 years, a building needs a new roof, and needs a heating system, needs a new generator, uh, new windows, and they had been sustaining losses, each year, and they found themselves without money to kind of keep themselves sustainable. And that was a real loss to the state to lose all those not for profits.
It really is, and as you know, I'm involved in Leading Age New York, and we see that as being the representative group of nonprofits and mostly nursing homes. And it's kind of a domino effect, because as the nonprofits start to close and or sell to for profits, and then we lose them as members of Leading Age New York. Um, Also, you have a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
support services, like Sodexos and Airmarks and those types of places that were, you know, a business earning revenue off of the nonprofits nursing homes. And then, so when those close, it has this far-reaching impact to the local community and even statewide,
yeah,
because
yeah.
a for-profit runs things differently, and they typically have centralized type of agencies that aren't local to at least the upstate communities.
Not for profits can learn from that, right? The way for profits are able to keep themselves sustainable with the same reimbursement is they run much leaner. Why does each facilities and you have an administrator in each place? One CFO over everything, maybe a finance representative at each facility.
It is. It's pretty sustainable when you're able to get a group of nonprofits together and run similar to how the for-profits do when it comes to the management. And again, that goes back to your comment earlier about let's focus the local money on
Right.
the direct care or the bedside staff.
So your organization has been able to demonstrate that even in a not-for-profit environment where you've consolidated multiple not-for-profits under one executive leadership team and just have local management.
That's right. And that I really feel like is the wave of the future for not-for-profits to be able to sustain is, let's consolidate that management staff. Let's focus our investments into bedside and actually be able to continue, that mission, however we define that, while still being able to, create a margin. And really,
Right,
that
right,
means beyond making money, the whole purpose of creating a margin is, for a nonprofit is to put that money back into, the pockets of the CNAs and the RNs and the direct care staff that were able to do that. And when we look past that and we just claim everything is mission, and again, I go back to you're not protecting mission, you're protecting
right.
tradition.
Well, I think that leads us to discussion of stewardship of resources, and that even a not-for-profit, especially a not-for-profit, has a responsibility to keep themselves sustainable. And you can't keep yourself sustainable if you don't have a profit. Profit's not a dirty word. You have to have a profit to put back into the depreciation of your facility, to put into supporting programs that are not profitable because they're not reimbursed well, and that's how you stay true to your mission. You have to generate a margin to be able to do those things. And if your annual budget doesn't generate a margin, you're not going to be sustainable.
Absolutely. And I will say from just a selfish point of view, as nonprofit leaders, it always feels so much better to make a financially uh, insecure decision, a decision that is financially foolish, and say, "Well, that's a mission-based decision." I just really feel good about myself that we put the mission
Oh,
above the
yeah,
finances, and it feels good. Um, However, sometimes when you have to make financially sound decisions, it just it really feels terrible emotionally. And I think that's where, nonprofit leaders can grow is by saying, you know what, it can't always feel good. Sometimes, you have to take the hard hits. You have to make those decisions that are just really terrible. Um, and difficult, but financially sound because I'm making the decision today for the people I'm going to care for in 5 years.
exactly. And the employees, you have a responsibility to keep your employees solvent, employed. And if you jeopardize the organization by making decisions that are not financially sound, you can end up having to close, and those people, your employees who rely on you for a livelihood, don't have jobs.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's and
So
make
what I've learned is
but
is when you want to do something that makes you really feel good and provide services that are mission focused but not financially viable, uh, go out and find somebody to fund it.
that's right.
Yeah, that's the way you do that. You go out and either get a grant or you find a wealthy benefactor in your community, and don't or you fund that activity because you're generating a margin that you put into your foundation, and then you can use that foundation to fund things that normally wouldn't make sense from a business perspective. But it's self-funded. It's not something that's going to pull your whole organization down.
That's right. You have those mission-based programming that you're able to and those things, those are sexy. Those are easy to sell to to people who are could be benevolent
Right.
as opposed to, hey, will you give me money because, my depreciation is too
Yeah,
high.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that, but like, they don't want to buy windows, but if you want to go out there and ask for money to support a particular type of patient that is under reimbursed, say memory care, you don't get the reimbursement to really cover the expenses for that. So you get
Right.
somebody to underwrite that. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
It is much better sell from a
Yep.
development point of view to say, hey, give to my Parkinson's program as opposed to saying, you know what, I really could use some, new sewer lines in the nursing home.
That's another, and we could probably have another episode on this sometime too about philanthropy and not for profits. And how to approach people in your community with a really a good case for supporting you. Nursing homes notoriously don't do well in this regard because all the reasons that people don't really like nursing homes. It represents aging and death and a failure to
Right.
take care of family members, and people don't like that. Whereas hospitals are like places where people get better and babies are born, and
Yeah.
so people donate there. But nursing homes, it's not sexy.
No, and in nursing homes, you don't have the big three, which are, you have veterans, but you don't have dogs and you don't have children, right? And those are like really the big three that
That's
people want
right.
to give money to,
You're right. You're
So
right.
if you had a nursing home that served, veterans, dogs, and children, then you're good on donations. Other than that, you're out of luck.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I have a friend who was the executive director of one of the state veterans homes, and I'm telling you, his golf tournament is like sold out every year.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Oh,
Joe, have you seen, and I'm sure you have, or maybe you have an example of, when we talk about mission versus margin, I certainly expect that a lot of not-for-profits are they're dragging through a program probably much longer than it should be open, right? Like they're slow to pull the trigger on closing programs that are what you might call an anchor to the rest of the company. Have you seen that as a trend? Is that do you and or do you see that in for profits too? Are they also slow to kind of pull the trigger on some of those?
it's interesting. Back years ago when I was in graduate school, I was taking a business course that was taught by a non-healthcare person, and he would always, reach out to the nurses in the class and make pronouncements about our decision making and so forth. But he used to say something all the time that stuck with me. He said, "Beware of the seduction of the clinical." Clinical organizations and clinical care have a seductive nature to it that makes us very attached to it. And it's very emotional and it makes it hard to make those tough decisions like you're talking about. And case in point, look at hospitals that are financially a wreck. But people hold on to them for dear life. They want to keep it alive. It's part of our community, even though it doesn't
Yes.
make sense. So that a microcosm of that occurs when there might be a particular type of unit in a facility or a program in a facility or organization that just doesn't make sense financially, uh, and and we're reluctant to let go of it because of that seductive piece of it and the attachment that we get that's on an emotional level. So you have to be careful to to be aware of that in your decision making. Recognize it when it's appropriate, but also recognize that it could interfere with you making good decisions, sound decisions.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of us are in these leadership positions because we deal well under pressure. We enjoy that. We want to feel needed. And where else do you feel needed with the train wreck,
Yeah,
department or the train wreck building that is just not doing well? And sometimes letting go of that, it feels like a failure to us. Um, but you have to reposition, you have to reorganize, and you really have to recognize kind of what's going on in the greater healthcare community. As my organization, we recently just closed a nursing home, and that
yeah,
was difficult.
yeah,
Emotionally, that was difficult. From a regulatory point of view, very easy, actually. And I've been fighting with the state over many different applications to get things opened.
right.
uh, to get a nursing home closed was probably one of the easiest things I've had to
Yeah.
do working with the state.
Well,
Uh,
sure, because they're paying a lot of money, all that Medicaid money.
yeah, it was a breeze on the
But
regulatory side.
I mean, that decision made so much sense. Even though emotionally, the community has a commitment to both those organizations, that they were a mile apart,
Right.
and they were already each one of them was probably larger than what the community can sustain in terms of need. They were built in an era where people, there wasn't such a thing as assisted living, and now there's different levels of care, and so you have to right size and you have to make a tough decision.
Absolutely. And my chief strategy officer made a great comment kind of as we were going through this. And she said, at one level, you could look at this as a success of the turn of the industry, right? It's
Yeah,
we have really, pre-COVID and through COVID, there was a large turn towards staying at home
right,
and being in the lowest level of care possible, getting care, through naturally occurring retirement communities and adult homes and home and community-based services, and which is all great. Those are all great things, and that's where people want to get their care. That's where they want to age in place. But the downside of that is, as you push people towards that, or encourage them, the state encourages them through reimbursement policies, and we just have this general social push towards care at home, aging in place. The downside of that is the places where that would be institutional, like nursing homes, are going to start to close as a picture of success of this program. We've really
right.
pushed people towards this, and we've said this is what you should do. And right before we closed our nursing home, I would say about a year before, we as an organization made a turn from caring for more people in their homes and as an outpatient number of people than we did in the nursing homes.
Mm,
And historically, that has always been, double and triple of the people getting care in the nursing home as opposed to getting care at home or as an
right,
outpatient.
right,
And we turned that corner and we really looked at it and said, this is, we're fighting. And as I said, we're protecting tradition. This is a place
right,
that's always been there. We've always done this. But what are we really looking at in the industry, which is a turn towards home and community-based services? And this is, you hate to say celebrating the success of this, but it really is. If you're going to look on the bright side of it, um, you're really looking at programmatically, this is what everyone's been pushing towards.
right.
And
And
now we're even more so with our number of outpatient home and community-based services, and you're seeing other organizations have that same success.
right, and you have other options now too, right? You can use that closed facility for space for those home and community-based services, or you can find a commercial use of that generates revenue that you can use to support your mission, by leasing it out, or there's other options that it doesn't, or you could sell it and use it to fund an endowment to support things. So there's just because you close a facility doesn't mean that asset no longer contributes to your mission.
Absolutely. And, these are the times that we're living in where, change is happening rapidly in long-term care. And we're really starting to see it in New York. We're finally, for the first time, I wouldn't say finally, but for the first time, we are under 600 nursing homes in the state, and which is pretty incredible. That we used to be at 650, 660.
Yeah,
Um, and we've seen, over the past 10 years, we've seen a lot of them close, and certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, it's really ramped up as the COVID money ran out and as the foundation money ran out, and as the state stopped approving sales,
right, right.
it's
Well,
it's inevitable it's going to happen.
as a consultant, I have clients all over the country, so I get to see a different perspective too. So, for instance, in the Midwest, not-for-profit nursing homes, it's not uncommon for them to have 20, 30, 40, 60 facilities across multiple states. I mean, I had one client that had facilities in 8 states and they were not for profit. It's a very different environment. You know, New York has been reluctant to have kind of chains or large structures like that, but it creates a different dynamic. I'm also working with a group of Indian tribes out in California that are looking to build a facility and helping them go through understanding what their community really needs. And as you said, you know, their first thought was like nursing home, but you know, maybe it's a smaller nursing home and it's more of assisted living, and also helping them think through. And I know in upstate New York, you guys struggle with this too, with workforce. You know, you can build it, but if you don't have people to work in it, uh, you know that doesn't work out. You know, so
That's
do you
right.
take the tribal vocational schools and help them generate more CNAs and LPNs and RNs to staff those? And if you don't do that concurrently with building it, um, you're not going to have a sustainable place. So sustainability is a very complicated thing that is multifactorial, not just margin, but also things like workforce. And as you said, uh, creating a livable wage for your employees. These are all important factors.
They are definitely. It is, the workforce is, and I think that, again, that's part of that turn towards home and community-based services is, when you look at patient to staff ratio,
Yeah,
as you have, more people going to college, and as you have, more people retiring than entering the workforce, those jobs that are certificate jobs that are greatly needed, within the nursing home and assisted living, they become less and less available
yeah, yeah.
as as staff members. And then, um, if only the state reimbursement was more equitable, we'd be paying CNAs and
Well,
LPNs.
it's only based on 30-year-old cost data. I mean,
That's right. Why would that? Yeah.
oh gosh.
All right, Joe. Well, I think we've kind of drifted a little off topic on the mission versus margin. Um, but I think this was a great conversation,
It was.
and I do feel like, again, if we're going to have kind of one key thought on this is, what are you protecting? Are you protecting your mission or are you protecting your tradition? That's really where our leaders need to be looking at themselves and looking at how we, as our mission driven leaders, can show up for our teams and the communities
Yeah.
we serve.
And focus on sustainability too. And that a decision might be difficult to make and it might negatively impact a small group. But if it's helping to preserve the integrity of your organization and the sustainability of your organization into the future, you're protecting many more people by making that tough call. So that's a focus as well, sustainability.
Absolutely. All right, Joe. Next time, I think we will have a guest. And to your point, I think we will be in the heart of hunting season. So
Yes, yes.
we may have different backgrounds in some of our upcoming episodes. I am not opposed to doing an episode in the duck blind with you, or in a
Yeah,
tree stand.
we could
So
do a remote broadcast.
that's right.
Yeah,
That'll
that would
be
be fun.
wonderful. Well, thanks for listening to the Leaders Abstract. These episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Dr. Jeremy Rutter, or Mr. Joe Tomaino, also on LinkedIn, with any questions or suggestions. We've been your host, and this has been the Leaders Abstract.